Welcome, everyone. We're just letting people into the call, so just bear with us for just a minute and then we will get started. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just about 15 seconds. Thank you for joining us today. We're just letting people into the call and then we will begin. Just a couple logistics. As we present, there is a Q&A and chat feature, so feel free to use that during the session. You can drop in any questions or comments that you may have, and we will try to save some time towards the end to answer any of your questions that you may have. All right, well, we are going to begin. So welcome to our Voice of the American Workforce webinar. We are so thrilled to have you join us today. My name is Joni Biley, and I'm a division president with Employbridge. And I am also joined by my wonderful colleague, Ziba Alizada, who is a vice president of our healthcare staffing. And so we are both going to share some really great information with all of you today on the voice of the American workforce. And if you're not familiar with the survey, I just wanted to take a minute and kind of share a little bit about the survey. It is actually the longest running survey of its kind, and it's the largest as well. This is our 18th edition. So Employbridge has been doing this research since 2007, and it is an anonymous survey that goes out to all of our temporary employees as well as our clients that want to participate. We allow them to have their employees surveyed, and we really get great insights into what is most important to American workers today. What are they looking for? What keeps them engaged? What keeps them retained and at your companies? And so we're going to share some of that research with you today. We do this survey and it goes out to all industries. And though Employbridge is very focused on the supply chain, so we have a tremendous amount of data around manufacturing and logistics, we also are surveying the professional and business service sector, the healthcare sector, the gig sector. So we are going to share some of the specific data with all of you today. So just a quick look at the agenda of what we're going to cover. I'm going to kick us off with an overview on just some insights to the labor market today. What are the numbers saying? What does the job market look like? What are we seeing from the government data that's released? So we're going to start with that. And then I'm super excited to share some new research from Employbridge, and that is called our EB Market Intelligence Tracker. And we'll talk more about that. Then Ziba is going to dig into all the details on the voice of the American worker and what they are sharing with us, and very specific to some of our healthcare workers of what they are looking for and what's most important to them. And then we also have some recommendations we're going to share with you. So again, thanks for joining us today. We will go ahead and dig into the labor market data first. So, you know, this labor market is really baffling to some people. You know, it's been a very strong labor market, for many years, we've seen very good job growth, particularly strong in 2021 and 2022. But we definitely have seen some softness in the overall job market in 23 and certainly into 24. However, the headline numbers that you see that are reported every month by the Bureau of Labor Statistics overall are still pretty strong. So we did see most recently, the first Friday in May, we got the April job data, and we had 175,000 jobs created for the month, and unemployment has stayed relatively low. We're right under that 4% mark, and it has been there for quite some time. We have strong labor participation when it comes to prime age workers, which are workers that are between 25 and 55 years old. We have 83.5% of the population participating. So those are some really great numbers. But what we are seeing in this data is that really for about the last 9 months to maybe even a year, most of this job growth is coming from three main sectors. It's coming from the government sector, the healthcare sector, and then we're also seeing travel, leisure, and hospitality. That industry continues to do very well. We are not seeing job growth in the professional and business service sector. So many of those white collar jobs really are not being generated on a monthly basis. We're not seeing those new jobs. And that could really impact college grads right now as they are starting to enter the workforce, because many of those opportunities that were there in 21 and 2022, unfortunately, are not available today. We also have seen some real challenges, though, in the temporary help sector. And I wanted to share a little bit about that because obviously Employbridge specializes in temporary workers. We also do permanent placement as well in many sectors. But this is the overall temporary help industry according to the government data. And you can see that jobs have really been lost in this sector dating back to about March of 2022. So we know that even though you look at the employment data, and it's referred to as a lagging indicator for the overall economy, the temporary help data is a leading indicator. It usually tells investors and Wall Street and just the overall, business economy, like what's happening. Are we going into a recession, or are we starting to pick up and really going to see some growth? And what's very interesting about this is we have had losses for almost 2 years. This data would normally point to that we are in a recession. I can tell you the temporary help industry is certainly has been in a recession, but the overall economy, technically has not been. So this is really the first time in the history of tracking this data for, over 50 or 60 years that we're actually seeing kind of a disconnect here with companies are letting go of temporary workers. But we still see corporate profits are strong, the stock market is strong, and overall, GDP continues, to do pretty well. So hopefully these numbers will start to pick up again. I know a lot of data, a lot of numbers we're kind of throwing at you, but, it's still a pretty good job market. Overall, we have 8.8 million open jobs in the United States. And that those jobs are in all sectors. Of course, government, healthcare, leisure, and hospitality remain the strongest. But we actually did see that the professional and business service sector did rebound very nicely after the pandemic. So this chart here that we're looking at really shows all of professional services, and you could see where we fell off a cliff during COVID. But the jobs really did rebound and even got above levels before the pandemic. What we also track and look at is how do people feel about the job market? And we track the quits rate. How many people are actually separating from their companies? And usually in a very robust job market, we will see that quit rates can start to, really increase. And it did certainly in a really good job market. You could see it started to increase in 2022 and 2023, but that's starting to come back down because there are less job openings. The market is getting a little bit tighter. And so people aren't as open to maybe saying, yes, I'm going to see if the grass is greener somewhere else and kind of make that change. Now, I wanted to take a look at healthcare, since I know many of you on the call are in, specifically in the healthcare field. We saw that obviously the healthcare numbers really did start to climb, of course, after, of course, all during the pandemic and then after. But if you take a look at where the job creation is, it's still really below the pre-pandemic levels. So this is something that, though healthcare tends to be one of the hottest fields, and there's so many different types of jobs available in the healthcare industry, we are seeing that we're not really back, to those levels. Healthcare quits was very high during 21, 22, and 23, because that's when that strong demand for healthcare workers really took off. But that has come down again. So again, with job openings starting to decline, we are definitely seeing that workers are staying put. They're not, open to maybe making a change, and not thinking that, they're going to jump ship for another job just to make more money. We certainly saw that during the pandemic. All right, well, I mentioned to you that we are going to share some new kind of hot off the press data with all of you, and excited to kind of share this information. This is proprietary data. This is done by our EB Insights research team that really puts together all our research. We have a great team of people that do nothing but kind of really look at the latest trends or what employers are saying, what's most important to them. Of course, our voice of the American worker, and really looking at the labor market data and employment data. So we decided to do this research in 2023, kicked it off, started tracking it, and we were really asking kind of what's top of mind to employers. What are the top business challenges? What's really kind of keeping them up at night? And so, as you can see from this slide, in Q3 of 2023, the top 3 things that hiring managers were concerned about were the rising inflation costs and how that was going to impact their business, their workers. They're very concerned about retaining talent. Again, it was still such a strong, robust job market, so that was a big concern. A lot of economic uncertainty. We were seeing inflationary rates kind of through the ceiling, but still a very tight labor market. People were kind of waiting to see, are we really going into a recession or not? And then, skill shortages, I think, was number 5, attracting talent, we're further down on the list. If we fast forward to Q4 of 23, inflation, again, at the top of the charts, and the same thing for most recently in 2024. That is still front and center. Employers are concerned with rising inflationary costs. But we did see some movement in the second and third spots. In Q4, economic uncertainty was beginning to be more of a concern, and then retaining talent and the skills shortage was starting to bump up. And then increasing wages most recently. I think what we saw from employers is that they did a very good job of increasing wages over the last few years, but they're concerned that they're going to have to keep up that pace. And what we're seeing in the employment market is wages are starting to flatten. And I don't think that should be an existing or long-standing concern, but next time we do the survey, we'll definitely give you an update on that. We also asked employers about what really were investments that they were making since the pandemic. And it was very interesting that, the pandemic really changed the way that we thought about work, the way we approached work. Employees were asking for different things. They wanted more flexibility, and employers really stepped up and made some changes very quickly in order to accommodate employees and also to meet the demands. So they made some investments around more flexible workforce schedules. Certainly pay was a big area that we saw that certainly increased. But there has been more awareness and effort and investment around overall well-being and health, and making sure that they're offering more of a well-balanced environment for people to work in. So this has been a trend that's been across the board. We've seen it, in manufacturing, in construction, in transportation, but we're seeing it certainly in the professional business service sector and the healthcare sector. These are the things that are most important. We also asked them what they anticipate to make next year. What are going to be some other investments, things that they're thinking about? And top of the list was a better work environment for their employees, really thinking about the environments that the employees are working in. Now, that tells us that they're probably thinking of bringing people back into the office. So even though we still have remote workers, there are many jobs that don't allow that. So flexibility, scheduling is still top of mind, but really trying to have an environment that people want to come back to made the top of the list. Training and upskilling was on the list. I was thrilled to see that, and we're going to talk more about that as you get into the survey results that Ziba is going to share in just a minute with all of you, because workers want training and they want upskilling. And so it's great that we're seeing a connection here, that employers know they need to make investments in this area, and we know that workers want to step up, invest the time, and learn some new skills so that they can advance themselves in the job market. So these were, really some great insights. This, again, new data. I love that we're taking a look at it more from an employer side of where are they investing, what are they thinking about, what are their concerns, and so we will continue to share this information with you. So with that, we are going to jump into our Voice of the American Workforce results. And I am thrilled to turn it over to my wonderful colleague and friend, Ziba, to kind of share the information with you.
Thank you, Joni. I always love how you talk about the market data and what we're seeing with employers. I think it's so important to understand what's happening in the job market and in the country. So thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Ziba. As Joni mentioned, I oversee our healthcare division with Employbridge. Thank you so much for your time and joining us today. I'm going to get right into this. As Joni mentioned, this is a survey that we've been doing for, 18 years. And I think it's so important to talk about these results because you hear it straight from the source and what employees are looking for. The top three areas that came up in the results was, of course, pay. And on top of that, though, that wasn't the only thing. Employees, of course, spoke and they talk about other stuff as it pertains to the reasons why they leave their current jobs. And of course, as Joni said, one of the most important things too, I think both Joni and I, upskilling and training. Okay, so the first question that we asked them was, what is most important to you when you're looking for a job? Pay rate is the number one thing that came up, but what's really interesting is that it's declining compared to the other areas, which is really nice to see. Now, pay is always going to be the number one thing that comes up. And I think when we do this survey next year, it will certainly be number one as well. But what's really interesting is that advancement opportunities and enjoyment of the work increased. Now, advancement opportunities showed up last year as well, but you can see that it increased yet again. And it's really important to understand that that's what workers are looking for. Now, pay rates did, or rather, the importance of pay rates certainly decreased. And this is something that stood out to me. And I think it's because for all the years that we've done this research, pay has always come on top as one of the most important answers. Now it's trending down. And I think this is because workers are finally receiving some of the pay increases over the last few years. Historically, we haven't really seen pay rates keep up with consumer prices and the expenses. But over the last few years, we've really been able to move the needle around pay, especially in the climate that we live in. Now, some of the areas that I would also like to point out is that healthcare workers indicated that they are also looking for remote and hybrid positions and jobs. And I think this is interesting because, as Joni just mentioned, a lot of employers are looking to go back into the office, and most already have. But healthcare employers are certainly still looking for that. They are also looking for job security, health insurance, and of course, a company's reputation. Now, in addition to finding out what's important about the jobs that they're looking for, we asked them that other than pay increase, what can companies do to earn your loyalty? And the number one thing that came up is advancement opportunities, good benefits, which is interesting. This actually increased from last year, and consistent opportunities. When it comes to good benefits, it's kind of starting to make sense, right? Pay rates have been increasing. So a lot of times employees will start then looking at benefits and the total compensation. Now, healthcare workers indicated that they're more likely to be motivated by paid time off, which again makes a lot of sense coming off the pandemic. We know that a lot of healthcare employees are burnt out. They worked around the clock, they're tired, and paid time off is certainly very important to them. Understanding what's required of them and what their role requires of them. Of course, company culture and feeling valued, and flexibility and training opportunities, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in the following slides. Thank you. Okay. Another interesting area that is evolving are shifts. Now, Joni indicated that most of the employees that were surveyed are within the supply chain space. But interestingly enough, healthcare workers also indicated that they prefer a traditional 8-hour work week. In fact, 75% indicated they want to work that 8 hours, 5 days a week, and 78% indicated that they want day shifts. Now, majority of workers are currently working traditional hours, but they want the 4-day work week, which is no surprise at all. I know in my home state, California, there are talks about changing some of the laws and getting people to work 4 days. So it's certainly an important area to keep our eyes on. Now, this does not necessarily mean that healthcare employees do not want to work other shifts. We work with several clients who we'll have our associates or our employees working 10-4 and 12-3 shifts. We also place individuals during night shifts as well as weekends. So the employees are willing to work those shifts. I think the differentiator is, are they going to be paid for it? So, in fact, 77% of healthcare employees indicated they're willing to work outside of your normal shift as long as they are being properly compensated. So if they're working, for those hours, they definitely want to get a little bit more money. The other interesting area was that more Gen Z and boomers are working the flexible, or they're looking for flexible hours, as well as females. Women came back saying that they prefer more flexible schedules, almost twice as much as male employees. So that's certainly something that's important to keep in mind, especially as healthcare employers, so that when you are doing those schedules, we can certainly incorporate that into some of these daily schedules, especially for the clinical employees. Okay. The other area that we wanted to look at is pay increase versus paid time off. We looked at if you take an employee that's getting paid $18 an hour and you offer them 5 additional PTO days, the average cost for the employer is roughly around $900 per year. If you were to increase that employee, their pay rate by $1, the average cost would be about 2,600. Now, this is what's really interesting. 69% of overall employees opted out for the PTO days versus the $1 increase. 74% of healthcare employees indicated that they would much rather have the PTO days versus the $1 increase. That means that our employees are looking for that extra time off. They're looking for work life balance. And the solution isn't always just to increase the pay rates, it's sometimes what you offer them. One of the things that I have heard Joni talk about time and time again about PTO, and I love this term, is pretend time off. We've all done it. I will go on PTO. I'm sure every single person on this call will be on PTO with their laptops, checking emails, checking voicemails, and our employees are probably doing the same thing. So I think it's so important. I love Joni when you call it protected time off, is really protecting that time off and making sure that we are encouraging our employees, our teams to take that time off, be able to recharge, and of course come back, which in turn is going to really result in better production. Great. The second area that I would love to talk about is why employees are leaving. As Joni mentioned, there is over 8 million jobs in the United States right now. So employees have the option, they can leave. So I'd like to take some time, really dig into the data. And the first question that we asked employees was, what are the reasons, or the top reasons rather, of you leaving your position? 27% of employees indicated that they felt they were not appreciated or they were not being treated fairly. 21% indicated that they found a job that has better pay. So we just again talked about pay rate coming in the top. However, that's not why our employees are leaving. Our employees are leaving because they do not feel appreciated or respected. I can tell you, we work with clients in the healthcare space nationally, and my team and I continuously deal with this time and time again of healthcare employees wanting to leave because they do not feel like they're being appreciated. The third and fourth result was really interesting to me. So 18% indicated they were laid off, which obviously makes sense. Joni just talked about the employment market. We know we've had a little bit of a soft economy, and 18% felt that they feel extremely overworked, which I feel it goes hand in hand with not feeling appreciated. A lot of employees feel that healthcare companies specifically are understaffed. Therefore, that means that they have to go above and beyond and wear themselves out to be able to take care of patients and their health, of course. So I think this is really something that we have to be aware of as healthcare employees. And, you know, look, Joni just indicated the labor market is certainly strong from a historical standpoint. We know that, during what we call the great resignation, the quit rates were extremely high. Now, pay rates have gone higher over the last couple of years. Employees are obviously staying, but when it comes to the professional services, yes, that area has certainly recovered. However, healthcare employment, even though it's growing rapidly, it is still very well below pre-pandemic numbers. So I think this is an area that, we have to strategize around as employers, because these positions are not only hard to find, we have to make sure that we're keeping our employees happy and able to stay employed for much longer. Great. Now, the final area, and an area that's so close to, I think, my heart, Joni's heart, and everyone here at Employbridge, is upskilling and training. Part of ensuring that we are keeping employees happy is making sure that they feel like they're constantly bettering their skills and their training. Now, the question that we asked employees is, are you willing to invest time to learn a new skill? 93% indicated yes. 47% indicated yes for free, meaning they're willing to invest their own personal time to get upskilled and trained. 46% said they were willing to do it, but if they were paid. Now, this number also ticked up a little bit, which just tells us that employees want to get compensated for the time that they are putting for, as far as getting better skill sets or better training. This is really important because it's teaching or telling us employers that employees want to get better. They're willing to put in the time and their own resources to take the next step because they really want that job security that's important to them. The other part that we did ask employees is how many hours are they willing to invest in training? And healthcare employees specifically indicated they're willing to invest 1 to 2 hours. Now, when you first look at this, it almost seems that that's a very low number, but I'm sure everybody on this call can attest when you're in the healthcare space and you've worked 14, 15-hour shifts and 3 days in a row with very little breaks, 1 to 2 hours of investing your time trying to better yourself is certainly very important. Now, the other part, as far as us asking our employees, not just obviously are they willing to get upskilled, but we asked them about their reasons as to why they wanted to learn a new skill. And surprise, surprise, everyone wants to make more money, right? So the number one thing that came up is certainly they want to make more money. The second thing is they want to be able to gain more stability. In fact, 55% of healthcare employees indicated that they wanted more stability, and about 50% they indicated that they wanted to get ready for a promotion or another job. And 33% felt that by getting the proper training, they will be able to get a position that is in higher demand. This is really important to understand as we strategize and allow our employees to get better trained. Really understanding the reason behind it, it's going to be very beneficial for us. Now, that's not all. Obviously, we talk about training, of course, but this is one of my favorite questions that we ask is that if Employbridge was to offer training, what would you be interested in? We spoke, or we rather did the survey with individuals in all of these areas: manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, transportation, hospitality, and clerical. And one of the things that stood out to me personally was automation and robotics. In every single area, employees are recognizing that they need to get better as it pertains to that, which is in line with what we're seeing, right? With all the talks of AI and what we're seeing out in the marketplace and the companies using AI. I can tell you personally, Chat GPT still freaks me out every time I use it. And I have seen my clients not be very comfortable with it. And of course, our candidates not being comfortable. So if we're seeing this many individuals not comfortable and people wanting to learn it, I think it's certainly something for us to pay attention. One of the reasons that I absolutely love that we ask this question is that it allows us to really align our training program. You may be already aware of this, and if you're not, please get with your local Employbridge team. But we do offer a lot of training through our Better Work Life Academy to all of our associates. It's a free service for them. And it's something that we incorporate some of these results, obviously, and their requirements into our training. So, again, if you haven't already done so, please get with your local team. They can help you really talk about this to the current temporary employees that we're placing for you. And it really sets us apart as an employer. And of course, not just us, but you as well. Okay. All right. I know I just gave you a lot of data. Joni went over what we're seeing in the labor market. Of course, I went over what employees want. I do want to spend some time with Joni. We'd love to take the time and go over some of the recommendations that our EB teams have put in place. And remember, this is something that is extremely important. So please try to incorporate some of this. First and foremost, obviously, we recommend having a strategy and creating a pathway for workers to see that they have an ability to grow not just personally, but also professionally. This starts at the interview time, this starts at the onboarding time. As Joni mentioned earlier, there are so many jobs. There were 175,000 jobs created just in April alone, and about 56,000 jobs in the healthcare space, less than 50% of those, again, being filled. So, this is, I think, an important step from the beginning of anyone's employment to set them up for success. Joni, talk to us about shifts.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I have to just add on to what you're saying, Ziva, because I think you're so right with kind of setting up those pathways, that the data that we've just shared with our audience. You can see that people are really looking for that advancement. So couldn't agree more with you that that should be a top priority for everyone. But the second thing, I agree with you on the shift schedule. We see it not only in manufacturing, but also we see in the healthcare space that employees are working many shifts. So if you are finding that you're having too much turnover, you're having difficulty retaining your workforce, productivity levels are down, we would encourage you to really look at your shift schedules and talk with your employees about them. Do focus groups, survey them, get some feedback. What are they looking for? And try to remember that, offering some kind of flexibility and being creative with your shift schedules can really help you with not only attracting talent, but certainly retaining those good, productive employees, that you don't want to lose from your company.
Yes, absolutely. That's great. And Joni, it's amazing that you bring that up and you make a great point. We're seeing that with some of our healthcare clients as they start to be more flexible and be a little bit more open-minded, right? As it pertains to shifts, we're able to really attract more talent for them. So a lot more
Yeah.
employees are willing to take those shifts. That's a great point. Okay, the third thing is we recommend, of course, as always, treating employees fairly and appreciating them. I'll be the first person to say and admit, and my team knows this, sometimes I have to take a step back and make sure I slow down enough to ask just how everyone is doing. Remind team members that they are, of course, being appreciated. We live in a very fast paced environment and we're all moving million miles an hour. So I think it's so important to take a step back and really appreciate employees, whether it's through doing fun creative contests or sending emails out. Just the smallest things can go a really long way. And of course, treating them fairly. This is something that, Joni, I have heard you talk about over and over. Part of treating employees fairly is ensuring that they are paid properly and competitively. And this is something that I know Joni is going to talk about a little bit more on the next slide, but this is something that, again, your Employbridge team can help you. We do provide a lot of thorough market data. We do a lot of research that we can kind of work with you, look at the location, the type of positions you're looking to fill or have, and we can certainly help you with giving you some of the competitive data that we're seeing in the marketplace. So certainly reach out to your teams and they can definitely work with you on that.
Yeah, and I agree, Ziba. I think, that was one of the top reasons, right, why people said they were leaving jobs is they didn't feel they were treated with respect or treated fairly. So to me, that's such an easy thing that employers can fix with effort and with communication, and really could make a difference. But to your point, sometimes we're all just so busy and caught up in our day to day, and we do have to just stop and make sure that we're really connecting with our team. So great advice.
Yes.
I'll go to the next one, which you touched on, and you're right. I'm really passionate about this, but I really would encourage all employers to think about some type of training or upskilling program that they could offer their employees. There are lots of resources locally in your market. Some of them might even be free. Sometimes there's government funding that the trade schools have to kind of help get people upskilled or reskilled. So I encourage you, if you don't have a very specific upskilling program, you don't have to, boil the whole ocean all at once. Maybe you just kind of think about one job that you really are going to be investing maybe in technology or making some advancements with the way that job gets done. And you might have an opportunity that you need to upskill those workers. Start with that. Think about what resources they need. What do you have access to? Do some research locally, see what's available to you, and get started with kind of offering your employees some training and some advancement opportunities to get them ready for how that job is going to change. Because we know that the jobs of today will really be evolving tomorrow and into the future. So I do think this is going to be the responsibility of all employers, and that this will be kind of a new trend in the future, is that companies are going to have to invest a lot more in upskilling and reskilling workers to get them ready for those jobs of the future.
Absolutely. Joni, I think that's such a great point because recently we did a survey with one of our larger clients, and one of the number one results that came back was that the temporary associates we were placing were appreciated that they were involved in the client's training program with their employees. So I think I absolutely agree with you. It's one of those things where it's going to continue to come up more and more. So those are great suggestions. Okay, the next one is very much in line with what we've already talked about, is really ensuring that you create a respectful environment. Most recently, SIA announced during one of their healthcare webinars that nurses and clinical employees, the number one thing that they look for in a position is respect. More so than pay, more so than the hours. They can be overwhelmed, tired, but the fact that if they feel respected, they will continue working with a particular agency or a company versus another. So, really showing respect and compassion, understanding what's going on in your employees' lives. We know that families right now are juggling a lot with inflation, rising costs of housing, food, and truthfully, we never know what someone is dealing with. So, we really encourage this and ask that you take the time, put some ideas around this, is ensuring really that you're showing respect and compassion. As I said, healthcare employees specifically, they would prefer having respect over pay. So I think this is something that's really interesting and certainly an important piece to keep in mind.
Yeah, such a good point, right? And so interesting about healthcare workers, because we all know they're such caring individuals and they give so much to themselves and they want that back. So, it really makes sense. Okay, our last recommendation for you, we could say it's wages, wages, wages. Really just staying competitive is super important. And it's going to help you attract the best talent. It's going to help you retain your employees so that they're not leaving to go for another job. And all of those things are so expensive, right? If you don't have the right people in the seat or the seat's empty, that is costing your company money and having an impact on your overall business and operation, regardless of what field you're in. And then if you're losing people, certainly there's a big cost for turnover as well. So having competitive wages will really help you. You'll be, kind of ahead of your competition, and you will definitely attract and retain the best people. If you need help with this, please reach out to your local Employbridge representative. We do have access to data and can share information based on positions and your location of what really is a competitive wage. So those are some recommendations for you. I'm sure all of you can think of some more as well based on this research. But I just wanted to share with you as we kind of wrap up here. You might be saying, well, what is EB Insights? Employbridge Insights really is our team of research analysts that conduct all of our surveys and research, both to the American workers as well as employers. They're pulling economic and labor market data. And they do a fabulous job of really putting together this research that we can share with all of our customers. So this is something unique to Employbridge. We invest in this area because we want to stay, out in front of the trends of what's happening. And we want to share this information with you to help you in managing your workforce. So you do have access to all of this by being a customer of Employbridge, the voice of the American workforce data, our pulse surveys that we do quarterly, which is our market intelligence. We put out a monthly economic brief, which is fantastic, and then additional thought leadership throughout the year. So please take advantage of that. You can access a lot of this information on our website and also request it from your local representatives. So Ziba and I would want to really just thank you for your time and for joining us today. We love talking about the latest trends and the data. And we are happy to take any questions that you may have. So I don't know if I've seen anything in the chat. I'm going to take a look. It looks like we might have one, Ziba.
Okay.
From Kevin, how do the wants and needs of current healthcare workers differ from those of job seekers entering the field? And what implications might these differences have for healthcare organization in terms of recruitment and retention strategies? So great question, Kevin. Ziba, since you are so close to that healthcare space, you want to take this one?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a great question. What we're really seeing with current healthcare employees versus, I guess, those just entering the space is really understanding, compensation. A lot of the newer job seekers are really asking for much higher pay rates than those that are currently working or current healthcare workers. The other part is when it pertains to the newer job seekers just entering the workforce, when it comes to the shift and the flexibility, that's something that's very big for them. Majority are looking for that flexible schedule. They do not want to work 40-hour weeks. We're seeing a lot of like gig type work continuing to increase at a faster rate than we've seen in the last 2 years. So just in the last year alone, we saw over a 7% increase in workers that wanted that, gig type scheduling versus current healthcare employees are willing to work those longer hours. The other part, and the other part of your question, as far as what organizations can do, is really offering flexibility, not just to the new job seekers, but also to the current healthcare employees. Because I think a lot of times what we're seeing is that employers will offer everything to those new job seekers, but then they forget their current employees and forget providing those types of trainings or those types of flexibilities. I apologize. One of the main areas we're seeing that in is training itself. So companies will be more prone to provide training to those new job seekers because they also have less experience. And that means that it has more risk, right, as it pertains to the patient care. So what they'll do is they'll provide a lot of training to those employees, but then not enough healthcare workers get the same type of training. And majority of the time, what we hear is that, well, they don't want to do that because they've been in the healthcare space for quite some time. But as you saw when we just shared the data, a lot of these employees are actually asking to be upskilled and trained. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I think that's a great answer, Ziba, that you've shared. And the other thing I would add, Kevin, onto that, and this just might be a little more general, but we're seeing that these younger workers that are entering the workforce, they're really struggling too sometimes with just basic communication skills. Unfortunately, a lot of them have grown up with their heads in their phones, and they need training also on kind of the personal interaction and communication and how to conduct themselves. And so there's a lot of research out there that kind of shares that there's an opportunity with young workers kind of coming into the workforce. And that's why I think bringing them back into an office is also so important. If they're working remote, it's really challenging that they're not getting those social skills that are so important. So I would just chime in with that as well. We have another question from Don. He's asking what solutions we might suggest to decrease the metric of I felt like I wasn't appreciated or treated fairly. And I'll take that one first, and Ziba, feel free to chime in. I think the biggest thing here is communication. Don, like employees need that, and they need it both ways, right? Like we need to listen as leaders and really understand what's important to them, and let them share that with us. But we also need to communicate, whether it's company strategy or reasons we're making changes, managing through change management. So my suggestion would be that communication can really help. People want to feel like they've been heard and that they understand why decisions are being made and kind of where companies are usually headed. So, Ziba, anything you want to add on to that?
That's a great point, Joni. I love that you mentioned that, and I think exactly what you said. Communication. If you hear the term, I feel like I'm not appreciated or treated fairly, I think as employers, my recommendation would be how so, one, right? And of course, asking the question and then really asking them how they feel or what they feel the solution should be, right? What type of changes could we make to make you feel that way? I think we see that a lot with our clients, Don, where, as Joni mentioned, with the younger workforce, some of the expectations may be realistic, right? But some may not be. So I think it comes down to keeping those lines of communication. I love that you mentioned, I just read your comment, you have an anonymous outlet. I think that's also very important, because a lot of times, we're all human beings, right? We worry about other individuals' perceptions. So having it be anonymous really affords your employees the opportunity to really share what it is that they want to share with you without being worried about being judged or there being consequences. So I would definitely keep those lines of communication open and asking for suggestions on, what they would like to see.
Great. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone who's joined us this afternoon, for this information. We are going to be sending out the information and a link to this video if you want to go back and take a look at that. So look in your inbox for that, and feel free to reach out to me or Ziba anytime. For more information. We appreciate you joining us and hope that you've enjoyed learning more about the voice of the American workforce. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.